My name is Erin Bodie and I work for a local organization called Turnip Creative Reuse, and I'm excited to be here with you all today. Today I'm going to be guiding you through talking about one of my favorite artists and a creative project that we can work on together. Before we get into details, I want to talk to you a little bit about what Turnip Creative Reuse does. So our mission is to foster creativity and sustainability through reuse. So we often divert materials from landfill, and we like to think of ways that we can reuse them and then use them in creative ways to create art. So we're actually going to be able to do that today in our project. So we are going to be able to use things that we have in our home, maybe things that we would have thought of before as something that we can throw away, but maybe we can use it today for our art project and reuse it for something new. So the artist I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today is Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo is one of my very favorite artists. She is a Mexican artist. She was born in 1907 and she passed away in 1954. She's often known, you have maybe heard of her, she is often known for her portraits, but more specifically her self-portraits. Frida Kahlo had an incredible imagination. That's really what guided her self-portraits, and she liked to be involved with the things around her. So she was really into nature and her surroundings. She was very in touch with plants and animals and butterflies and monkeys, and that shows up a lot in her work. Something really special about Frida is she used her inner life to really guide her self-portraits as well. She had a great imagination. So think a little bit about your imagination and your inner life. Just the magical places that you often go to in your mind or with your emotions, things that you feel, and how that can be used for your own creative process and your own art. She had a very rich imagination, and we're going to investigate a little bit about what that looked like in her art, and I will show you some of her artwork and her paintings. Before I show you her art, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her story. So Frida was born in 1907, and she was very inspired by Mexican folk art, as you will be able to see in her art. I will show you in a little bit, and she incorporated a lot in her own artwork as well. Something that was really special to her in her self-portraits was her identity. So a lot of times Frida did something different than what everybody else was doing around her. She was very in touch with who she was, and she, at the time, maybe wore things that were not as accepted for women at that time, maybe were involved with things that wasn't as accepted for women at the time, but it was who she was, and she was very much herself in everything that she did. And she didn't go along with normal cultural norms. She really did her own thing, and a lot of times that was criticized by peers or people in her community, but she was truly herself, and her identity was something that guided her artwork and her clothing and really everything that she did. She had an interesting life. She was disabled when she was born. She was born with polio, which is a disease that affects her bones. And she was 18. She was in a horrible bus accident, and she actually fractured her ribs and both of her legs, and her pelvic bone. And so she had a lot of pain growing up in her early years, starting at age 18. And she was in a wheelchair for a really long time, and she spent many, many months recovering in bed. And so when she was recovering in bed from this terrible bus accident that she was in, she had to tolerate a lot of pain, and she had a lot to process emotionally and physical pain. And that is when she really began her art. So imagine being in a really terrible accident. You are laying in bed for months and months, probably processing a lot of different things, probably sad in a lot of ways, frustrated, missing friends, missing family. and really wishing that you could go out and do the things that you usually do. And so she was laying in bed for a really long time. And one thing that she found that she was able to do was that she was able to put something in front of her as she laid in bed, kind of like an easel, and she had paper in front of her. And she began to draw and paint the things that she saw and the things that she felt. Something very unique to Frida's work is that she uses symbolism to really describe a lot about how she's feeling. So sometimes it's really hard to express what's going on in your inner life and your imagination through art. You can do it in a really obvious way, like if you were to draw a self-portrait and show yourself sad or crying, frustrated. But she really used symbols as a way to make it a little bit less obvious and let the viewers see it and kind of experience it for themselves and see her and try to process along with her and see what she was really experiencing. So I'm going to show you a few of her artworks here today. So like I said, Frida is known mostly for her self-portraits. So here are a few of my favorite self-portraits of Frida. She has a really unique design. And so as you can tell in this picture here, that is a self-portrait of her. And in her forehead is actually her husband that she painted into her forehead. Here she is in, the backdrop is foliage and plants that were probably around her at that time. And then she's surrounded by monkeys. So like I said, nature is a huge part of her work. And you can see that in a lot of her different self-portraits. So here's another one. This is a picture of her head on a deer, and she has arrows through the deer, and she's in the woods. It's a lot of symbolism. And here is another one of her. You can see her full body here. Oftentimes she doesn't show her full body in self-portraits, but here's a picture of her self-portrait, and then two outfits alongside next to her that were traditional Mexican clothing at that time. So now we're going to go ahead and get started on thinking about our own self-portrait. So today we are going to talk about what it means to make a self-portrait and different materials you can use and different ways that you can do a self-portrait, and then I will show you the one that I made of my own self-portrait. So first I want to talk about how Frida Kahlo uses symbols, like I had mentioned. Like in some of these self-portraits that you can see, the imagery with her face being on the deer, the monkeys, the traditional Mexican clothing that she includes. There's another one here. This is kind of a popular portrait of Frida Kahlo. It is called The Two Fridas, and this is her in two different versions of her. You might not be able to see it super clearly here, but you can see that the heart is exposed, and these two Fridas are connected through a vein in the heart. And so there's just a lot of symbolism of the emotions that she's feeling, even the background that she has, that she uses in the colors that would describe maybe how she's feeling or trying to express herself in a really unique way. So you can think of symbols. Symbols can really be anything. A lot of times you can use symbols. There are symbols that are used to represent where you came from. So as Frida uses traditional Mexican clothing, oftentimes she wears flowers in her hair and has like a lot of jewelry that she wears that would be traditional Mexican jewelry. And so maybe something from where you came from. And that could be like a picture of a flag, or maybe flowers that grow in a really unique place that you're from. Maybe there's specific food from where you're from or where your family came from or your heritage that you would want to include in your self-portrait. Another thing would be, like Frida, she uses a lot of spaces in nature and in animals that she loves and animals that maybe represent something. And so a lot of times, animals can mean something more than just what they are. And so you could include an animal in your picture, in your painting or drawing, a specific plant or tree that means a lot to you or has a specific meaning. You could do flowers. that maybe grow in the garden that you grew up in, or a specific flower that makes you feel a certain way that you would want to include in different life stages of a flower or different life stages of a tree that might mean more. Like if it is blooming new growth, it could mean, or new flowers, it could mean new growth and a new beginning, or it could be during the fall time. You could incorporate a tree during fall and show leaves falling, and that could mean something specific to something that you may be feeling. So showing different nature, different pieces of nature in different seasons also can mean a lot too. Other things that can be symbolism is color. You will see in my self-portrait that the background of my self-portrait is blue, and I specifically chose that because I feel really connected to the color blue. I really love water, and so I use that as a symbol for water. And the specific color that I used is just something that I feel connected to, and I really love. It reminds me of a specific creative process that I used to do when I was younger, and so I love it for that reason. So there's a lot of different reasons that you could use symbolisms or symbols in your painting or your picture, your drawing, that you job. So I will show you what to do next. And so you can do a lot of different ways to do self-portraits. And I will show you some examples of the Frida self-portraits that we have done before. And so you can do something simple where you use a pencil or a pen and paper, maybe colored pencils, a crayon, just whatever the simplest thing that you have in your house. You can do a self-portrait with just that. You can also use your phone camera. I used my phone camera as a picture because I didn't have a mirror handy, but if you had a mirror, or you could use something to do a reflection, so you could look at yourself while you draw your self-portrait. So paper, some sort of writing utensil or drawing utensil, maybe just to do the outline at least, maybe a pencil or a pen. And then you can be creative in whatever you want to use in order to color and design and detail your art. And so, like I said, at Turnip Green Creative Reuse, we like to reuse a lot of things that would maybe otherwise people would think is trash, or that they can't use anymore, but still have more life to give in maybe some sort of creative process or artwork, which is what we're doing here. So maybe some things that you wouldn't have thought of before, but of course, scrap paper if you wanted to do more of a collage type art for your Frida self-portrait. I have some fabric around the house that I do sewing, and so these are just some extra scraps that you could cut and you could put in the background, or if you were doing a yellow flower, you could cut a petal out of this. So different scraps for fabric to give some texture. These are some old cards that I have. You could cut out an image, or you could cut out a shape using old cards so that you could have different media on your paper. So those are some things that you could use that you may have around the house. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that you have, maybe an old notebook that has different colored paper that you could use different things, different types of paper in your picture. Or if you'd like, you could keep it simple and just do, maybe you have paints that you would like to use, watercolor, colored pencils, crayons, markers, a little bit of mix of all of those things. And so here are some self-portrait examples here. And so it looks like all four of these are more of a traditional self-portrait using crayons, colored pencils, markers, those kinds of things. And so it looks like it shows the person. This one's very specific to Frida, using the two Frida, it's called, the two Fridas that they used to design their own. But these ones are just the picture of themselves and then some images that are meaningful to that person that they feel like represent them. Or like I said, you can do more of a collage. And so those are actually pictures of Frida and some symbols that represent Frida. But here are some pictures of some people, and they used different scrap papers and also used, it looks like, markers for their self-portraits. So you can go ahead and find the objects that you may need in your house, the different pieces of material that you may use. And also you can think about the symbolism that you may be using for your self-portrait. You may have something in your house that would symbolize it, or it might just be an image in your head. And so I will talk about the 4 symbols that I use in my self-portrait. 2 of them are plants, so one of them is a shamrock. And that is very representative of who I am. My 2 of my grandparents are from, their parents are from Ireland, and being Irish is something that I really grew up on, and is something that's really important to my family, especially my grandmother. Hearing many stories of her family growing up in Ireland and moving over to the United States. And she has a whole room in her house that's green and is just filled with shamrocks. And so that's really important to me and my family and my connection with my grandmother. So a shamrock is one of the things. I don't have a picture of a shamrock in my house or an image, so I don't have one to show. But my next symbol is another plant, and it is the thistle. And I actually do have a picture, a little scrap paper of a thistle. And a thistle is a weed. And it's just a picture, it's a symbol that means a lot to me, because of different things I've been involved with, and I just think it's a really beautiful plant, and I wanted to incorporate that into my self-portrait. So I have this here to show me, to kind of remind me. Another image that is a symbol that is meaningful to me is an elephant. Elephants are my favorite animal, and my sister actually got me this little elephant when she was on a trip in Mexico, and so it's actually unique to this project too, because Frida is also from Mexico. But I used this this elephant. I actually traced it in my self-portrait, so it's kind of like a block version of an elephant, which I really liked. And so I have this guy here too. And then the 4th symbol that I use in my self-portrait is a peace sign. And so I have this bag that has peace signs on it, which is a true symbol that we have seen many times before. And so I have that here as well. So it's nice to have objects if you can see them and touch them and be able to look at them when you incorporate them into your self-portrait. But like the shamrock, I don't have one with me, so I just did it from memory. But peace signs are really important to me because in everything that I do, just trying to be a peaceful person. Inner peace is something that's important to me, and being able to share peace with people around me, and hopefully making this city and our world a more peaceful place every day. And so I wanted to incorporate all 4 of those images into my self-portrait. For my self-portrait, like I said, I used my camera to show me like a reflection of myself, and I drew that with a pencil, and then I used some colored pencils to color that in and liven up the picture. And then I did a little bit of collaging with my hair. I did different pieces of brown paper, just to give it a little bit of texture. But you can do anything that you want. I don't have watercolors with me at my house, but if I had watercolors, I probably would have used that for the background, because like I said, I really love water, and I think that would have been a cool effect, but I didn't have that with me today. But here is my self-portrait. And so I did the thistles and the shamrocks alongside me, and then the peace signs floating in the air, and then here are my 3 elephants. And so I wanted to incorporate a little bit of things that were involved with nature, so I really wanted to include plants and animals, but also really love the idea of including peace, and the background being blue, like I had said, is a symbol of water, and reminds me a lot of my childhood. And so I really love to include the color in the background as well. So yeah, find things in your house that you might want to use to make something creative with your self-portrait, and think of symbols that are really important to you, and including those both together in a self-portrait is a cool way to make art that really represents the type of art that Frida Kahlo made. And hope you all have fun with it. Thank you for joining me, and talk to you soon.